with you, and Father Leon asked me to speak about something that I know a bit, and that is about St. Joseph Cafasso. As our compere said, I've just come back from 11 years in Italy, and in a place called Turin. This is not Turin, this is Turn, no? Turin, there is a statue of St. Joseph Cafasso. And that statue is very special because it was made with the contributions of people who were in prison. You all know that, some of you all know. So, St. Joseph Cafasso is the patron saint of people who are in prison. And rightly enough, the squad is called Cafasso Squad. Some of you belong to that. No? Cafasso, one of his ministries was looking after people who were in prison. And not only people who were in prison, but accompanying those condemned to death. In fact, his statues put up exactly where people were being hanged to death. So you can imagine this priest accompanying people on their road. And not only accompanying them in these last moments, during their confession, preparing them for a death that would be called in some ways happy and good. But he also had this holistic perspective. He knew that their families needed help. And so he gathered a group of what you might call a secret association. A group of rich people of the city who formed part of this association called the Misericordia, Mercy. And these people secretly contributed money from which Cafasso would help the families of people condemned to death. Apart from doing prison ministry, Cafasso was also a formator in what you might call a post-seminary kind of formation house. So this was for priests who had already been ordained, but were in the first 2 years of their ministry. Very brilliant idea. They felt that the seminary had not prepared priests for their ministry, and so they were called for 2 years to stay together, and people like Cafasso would help them to enter into different ministries. And one of the ministries he would help his priests to enter was the prison ministry. And one of the young priests whom he brought into the prison ministry was Don Bosco. After Don Bosco was ordained, he went to Cafasso, who was a spiritual guide, and he asked Cafasso, what should I do? I have got this offer, I have got that offer, I have got that offer. Cafasso said, none of these, you come to this place where people learn to be priests. And Don Bosco must have been a dull student because he kept him for 3 years, most people stayed for 2 years. And during this time, he took Don Bosco to the prisons. And Don Bosco describes very graphically the state of young people in those prisons. And he said to himself, these people come again and again to the prison. And I suppose this is something that you also see. People come back again and again. And he said to himself, if when they get out of prison, they find a friend to take care of them, they will not come back to the prison. This was the great inspiration that he got from that ministry. But Cafasso used to take him along also to the hanging. Or rather, he took him along for one hanging. And Don Bosco fainted. He could not handle the sight of a young person being put to death. And after that, talking to the spiritual guide, he realized that accompanying people like Cafasso to the death sentence was not his cup of tea. But he remained with the other inspiration. He decided to work so that young people on the streets might not land up in prison. And that is what he became, the apostle of people, of young people in difficulty, making sure that they got a good livelihood, and above all, that they found what God wanted them to do with their life. I think the small thought with which I would like to end is this. Many of you, I'm sure, have already made your commitments, as Prince George quite clearly told me. I have made my commitment. I like to hear that word. I want to ask those of you who have not yet made your commitments, are you thinking about what commitment you want to make? Nobody in the church is a mere spectator. Everybody in the church is an active person. In other simple words, every one of you has something special to do in the church. Sometimes they say, every one of you has a vocation. Let me put it better. Every one of us has a vocation in life. Pope Francis used to insist on this. Every one of us has a vocation in life. Have you thought about what God wants you to do with your life? Cafasso would be happy if you asked that. Maybe some of you will say, this is my vocation, the prison ministry. Somebody else may say something else. Whatever it is, there are many vocations in the church. The consecrated life, the priesthood, the lay ministry. So many ways of following Jesus in the church. Tonight's vigil, this might be a good time for you to let this question enter into your hearts. Let Saint Joseph Cafasso enter into your heart with this question. What does God want me to do with my life? What is my way of being a follower of Jesus? And God on His part will not hide His answer, but we have to get attuned to whatever He is trying to say. I would like to pray for all of you tonight that you might, those of us who have made their perpetual commitments, that we might be able to live faithfully. Those of us who are still searching, that you might be able to hear the voice of the Lord and say yes. Thank you.